Hi and welcome to Photo IQ. This is Unit 6 for Camera Basics, where we're going to discuss proper handling of your lenses. Let's get started. I think often people feel embarrassed to ask questions that they think are obvious, but quite honestly, if you don't ask the question, how will you know the answer to it? Of course, there has to be a certain level of curiosity. Checking the manuals and things like that would reveal the answers, but there's a lot of things that are consistent across the art form that are constant in every platform, no matter what kind of camera you choose. So one of the things that we're going to be looking at here is how to handle this stuff properly so that you will feel confident when you're handling the equipment. The first thing you're going to want to do is locate your lens release. You can see in the images beside me, I have 3 different brand platform examples. We have Sony, Fuji, and Canon down here on the lower right. And it's either going to be on the right side or the left side of the lens, but it's always going to be on the front of the body at the base of where the lens attaches to the body. So on the Canon, the Fuji and the Sony, it's located on the grip side of the camera in here. Whereas on Nikon and on Canon, it's going to be located on the outer portion of the body. When changing the lens, have a firm grip. So you're going to want to make sure that you hold on to the body and the lens. So the body with your left hand and the lens with your right hand. Don't try to do this in a fancy way, because the more fancy or tricky you get with this, the more likely you are to drop something and break it. So you're going to get to the point where you have a nice firm grip and it's a practiced maneuver where you're able to do it over and over again with repeatability and not risk dropping or breaking anything. And a lot of it has to do with the way you hold it. So jumping to the next slide, you'll see each of the camera brands has their markings in a slightly different way. So we're going to run through the 3 examples that I have on hand that I can give you photo examples for. You're going to have to check specifically with your camera, because I don't have an Olympus, a Panasonic, or a Nikon as an example here, and I don't have a Canon DSLR. The Canon camera that I have is my cinema camera that I'm filming this lesson on, and that's what the example here is from. This is from the camera that you're watching me on. But the button location and the button shape is the same across all the Canon cameras. So that is something that you'll be able to see with predictability just by this example here. The Sony cameras have a little white dot that's located on the body mount. So on the part here around the sensor, that's where you're going to see that little white dot. And that is meant to line up with the dot on the lens. So you'll see when you go to attach them that you're going to line up that blue dot with the white dot and then turn it clockwise and it clicks into place. You can either touch it that way, grip and pull off, reapply, or you can use this finger to touch the button, right? So I'm going to press it like this with my finger. So push in, twist, and pull off. Next, let's look at the marking. So you can see there's the white mark right there, and then there's the blue mark right there. Now it's blue because this is a Zeiss lens, and Zeiss's color is blue. So it won't be blue on all the lens. So we're gonna line up that white mark with the blue mark here, and then turn clockwise, okay? Fujifilm lens marks are on the opposite side. So the white dot on the Sony was over here at 2 o'clock, and on the Fuji, it would be at roughly 10 o'clock. So on this one, this camera has a less deep of a grip here. So it's simpler to get my middle finger in there to touch that trigger. So it's not as awkward to do that way, but it still is probably safer with a more sure of a grip to do it this way, okay? But that's, of course, gonna be up to you to find. When you practice, don't do it while you're hanging out of a moving car window, okay? Practice this on a bed or something where if you drop it, you can land on a comforter cover or something that's nice and soft. There's no penalty for failure. Well, at least on this lens, this is a Mitacon lens. This is not a Fuji brand lens. And so the red dot is here on the face of it. I'll set that down. This is a Fuji branded lens. And this one has a dot on the top of the body of the lens. So the red dot to the red dot, and then a quarter turn, and it locks on nice and tight. Now let's look at the Canon lens markings, just a little bit different. All the dots are gonna be red. The face of the lens mount has a red dot right at 12 o'clock, and then on the lens mount, there's going to be a red dot that's visible on the top of the lens body, which you can see it even when the cap is on or when it's attached to the camera. So once you've changed your lens, make sure that you take it off. You have your lens cap on. You can set it down on that lens cap because it's plastic. And then let's say we want to put my Mitacon lens on. All right, take that off, place that on there, twist it and turn it off, close it, and then find the markings. I'm ready to go. Now don't store your lenses. These lenses are on display like this. They're on their back cap because it's for appearance here, but it's not as secure to be resting on the smallest point. It's much more secure to be resting like this, face down, because it's the wider base part. The end of the lens is wider than the rear element. So you want to make sure that when you set them down, just set them down that way. Even better, put them right into your bag or put them into your case. Don't just lay them around like that. This is only just for demonstration purposes. You should never put your stuff and store your stuff in this manner. Some of the points that I have here is rotate clockwise or counterclockwise. All of the lenses that I have and all the camera systems that I have are a clockwise turn. So when you attach each of these camera lenses to each of the bodies, it's going to be a clockwise turn. Nikon is a counterclockwise turn. There's going to be manual focus lenses, such as this Zeiss Luxia lens, which has a very smooth, dampened focus ring, and it's designed for manual focus. There is no electronic motor in this lens, which is one way that they can save a little bit of cost. If it had automatic focus, then the cost of the lens would probably go up another 15 to 20%, and it's already about $1,000 lens. So having all manual control in there is one way that keeps the cost down, and they can put higher quality optics in there to keep it around the same price point. Then there's going to be autofocus lenses, such as this Zeiss Batis lens, which still has a nice manual focus ring on it, but the intent of this lens is to be used with autofocus. It's an 85mm lens, and so that's kind of a long, sort of what's considered a short telephoto. And you're going to be typically using this lens, an 85mm, for portraiture. With portraiture, a lot of that is autofocus work because the cameras have such good autofocus where they lock onto the eye autofocus and things like that, that it's going to be locking onto faces, locking onto eyes, and it's going to be very predictable and repeatable and very fast autofocus and very accurate autofocus. So a lens like this, its intent is to be used with autofocus. And then a lot of the Canon lenses that I own, they have a very good manual focus ring. However, the amount of rotation that's required to achieve sharp focus is such a small rotation of the ring, so you're always kind of hunting back and forth at trying to lock things in focus, that it's intended for you to use it on autofocus. So the focus ring is going to be a little bit imprecise, even though it's a very, very high quality focus ring. It's only a 120 degree turn. I think it's 120. 120 degree rotation from the shortest possible distance to infinity. And when you're in there right around 7 to 10 feet, there isn't even a marking for 10. The markings in here go from 7 to 20. That's kind of a long distance to be playing with, especially if you're at a shallow depth of field. Then that is going to be a lot of hit and miss, trial and error to get your shot perfectly in focus. So when you're dealing with certain situations that are challenging to get in focus, that is an area where you're going to want to opt for autofocus rather than manual focus. So hard stops is another point that I have on here. Let's use this Zeiss Luxia here as our example. Hard stops means that there is a definite beginning and an end to your focus range. So it reaches the end of the focus ring. It doesn't go any further. So that's the shortest focus distance. And then we can zoom or focus out. And then that's the end of the focus range here. Versus the traditional focus ring on a Canon and Nikon, they're both gonna have this, is you can see right here, that's our focus point. So we're at infinity. All right, now you can see I can still turn the ring. So infinity, and then I'm gonna focus the other way, and I can still turn the ring, okay? And then when you change direction, it picks it up again. When you're working with these infinite rings, you can actually sometimes, it makes a little bit of a click. Okay, there's a little bit of a tap click sound there when you reach the end of the focus range. But if you're out in a noisy environment, you may not hear that little noise, and you may not necessarily feel it either. So if you're trying to work with manual focus, that could be something that can throw you off a little bit. It's not, again, not the end of the world, but it is a characteristic of the lenses, and I want you to understand the difference between the equipment. All right, the last thing that I want to discuss in this lens video is lens hoods. Now, a lot of lenses are going to come with hoods. Okay, so there's two kinds of hoods that you can get. There is, as you can see on the screen next to me, there's this barrel shape, which is even on all sides. Okay, I have a few of those here. And then there's the petal-shaped hood. Now, the petal-shaped hood, and I have two of them, those usually come on wide-angle lenses and zooms that have wide-angle ends of the zoom range. So this 24 to 70, the 24 is somewhat wide-angled. And because these are circles, all right, and the sensor itself is a rectangle, it's longer on the horizontal axis, okay? So that means that we can see more out of the horizontal edge, the long edge, than we can on the top and the bottom. So therefore, the hood can afford to be longer on the top and the bottom than it can on the width. Otherwise, if we were to rotate this and wear it like this, you would start to see the hood come into the image. So when you attach it, it has to be attached properly so that the long ends are on the top and the bottom, okay? Now, one effect of hoods is that people might be tempted to place them down. So let's take my Zeiss Batis 85, and this has a nice round hood on it because it's a short telephoto lens. So a short telephoto lens means that the angle of view is going to be well within that circle. So this hood is not going to be showing in the image. So you might be tempted to place it down like this, to place it down on the hood. Don't do that because all the weight is up here on the backside. The rear element is what's really heavy on these lenses. So if you place it down like this, I mean, you could do it for just a moment or two if you're just setting it down in order to change lenses or something. But if you set it down and you leave it like that, it's gonna want to fall that way. So if it were bumped or knocked over, it's gonna very easily tumble, okay? It's still going to be safer set down like that on the rear element, all right? And develop good habits by placing your lens caps on whenever you're done, all right? Your rear lens cap, as soon as you take it off of your camera, place that rear lens cap on, place the front lens cap on. It'll keep it nice and clean and ready to go when you need it. The pedal-shaped hoods, don't do this at all. That is terrible, because not only is all the weight on the rear side of the lens, but you've also got no contact here and here. So now it's way more likely to fall over. So you're still much better off placing it like that. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is how to attach the lens hood. You can see there's a red mark here and there's a red mark there with the Canon logo. Line those two up and close. And then there's a little circle that lines up with it. So the circle is the locked position. Now this particular hood actually has a locking button, which you can see, and that keeps it locked on. So if you want to remove it, you press that, turn it, and it comes off. Okay. And other lenses don't have, that's the only hood that I have that has a lock on it. Most of them just come loose with a turn. Okay. And this one doesn't have any marks to line up, but it does have this identifier on the top there, which kind of tells you. So there is a white mark here, and there's a white mark here. I wonder if that, I never even looked at it. Yeah, that's it. Okay. So that's how that lines up. Now, one thing is that people will tend to want to store their lenses with the hoods in the reverse position because it makes them smaller. I'm sure you've seen this. It's very common to want to do that. It does save space in the bag, but I'm going to tell you, don't store your lenses with them locked in position, because they can get broken that way. Once they're in position in the bag and they're locked in, it's only plastic that these things are made of. So if these are twisted or they're forced or knocked around, it can break. And then once they're broken in the reverse position, it becomes kind of annoying and difficult to get them off. And you might get pieces stuck in the grooves. So my recommendation, when you're putting them in your bags, just put them like that. Just leave them so that they're not necessarily locked on, but you can place them in the position of reverse and then just place them in your bag that way. Don't lock them in the reverse position. All right, we've reached the end of Unit 6 of Camera Basics, where we talked all about handling lenses and storing lenses, focus rings, hard stops, all different kinds of stuff. I hope you learned a ton, and I hope to see you in the next video. Until then, keep shooting.